Whoa. So former President Trump just gave a speech in Phoenix, Arizona, and let me tell you, it was absolutely packed with some bombshell claims. We're talking everything from Middle East peace deals to the U.S. border. I mean, these were massive declarations. So today, we're going to deconstruct those claims. We'll look at exactly what he said, and then we'll get into the analysis that came out right after.
And he really framed all of his accomplishments around this one core idea, right? That we achieved what everyone said was impossible. This was basically the jumping-off point for a whole series of pretty stunning claims. So let's start with his first big topic, the Middle East.
All right, first up, deals in the Middle East. The first set of these impossible achievements, as he called them, were all about a series of deals involving Iran, Israel, and Lebanon. Let's get right into the details.
Okay, so the core claim about Iran was super simple and totally absolute. They will never have a nuclear weapon. End of story. But how this was supposedly achieved, well, this is where the details get a little unusual. Especially the plan for what to do after these alleged nuclear tests. You see, the plan he described wasn't about, going in and seizing materials by force. Nope. The proposal was to get them back in cooperation with Iran. Yeah, you heard that right. It's let's just say, a highly unconventional approach, and the specific method he laid out was even more so.
So the plan, in his own words, was this. We're going to go in together with Iran, with lots of excavators. Like the biggest excavators you can possibly imagine. And the idea was to just dig up and remove nuclear dust from these supposed tests. And that was pretty much it. That was presented as the straightforward solution to the whole problem.
Okay, so after Iran, the focus shifted to another huge claim, an unprecedented ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon. This was presented as a totally separate landmark achievement.
And to really frame just how significant this was supposed to be, he used a very specific number, 78. The claim was that nothing like this ceasefire had happened in 78 years. Really positioning it as a once-in-a-generation kind of breakthrough.
So who got the credit for making all this happen? Well, the speech specifically thanked a whole list of nations. Pakistan was singled out for its help, and he praised several key Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, and others, for their courage during the negotiations.
And this is the term he used to kind of wrap the whole narrative up with a bow. Iran was called the former bully of the Middle East, implying that these new deals had just completely reshaped the power dynamics in the region. So let's see how this whole narrative then extended to claims about global alliances.
All right, next up, transatlantic alliances. The focus shifts from the Middle East over to Europe, with some very direct comments about NATO and its role, or maybe lack thereof, in recent events.
So, the speech laid out this story about a direct interaction with NATO. The way it was told is that after the whole situation in the Strait of Hormuz was pretty much over, that's when NATO called to offer help. And the response he described was just a sharp rebuff. Too late.
And to really drive this point home, he used this political analogy. He said, listen, just so you understand, campaign contributions after I won don't count. And NATO after we won, that doesn't count either. So basically, he was comparing NATO's offer to a campaign donation that shows up after you've already won the election. The message was crystal clear. Help that isn't on time is no help at all.
Okay, and from there, this speech just pivoted dramatically. We're turning from foreign affairs to a real rapid-fire list of victories on the home front. So let's take a look at some of the numbers he threw out. So, on immigration. The big, crucial point was this really stark figure, 0. 0 illegal crossings in the past 11 months. And this was all part of a much broader claim of having created the, quote, most secure border in U.S. history.
Then, when it came to crime, the claims were just as historic. The speech asserted that the murder rate had fallen to its lowest level in 125 years. I mean, think about that. That's a level we haven't seen since the year 1900.
The speech also highlighted a huge drop in illegal drugs coming into the country. He claimed a 59% reduction in fentanyl crossing the border, and then an even more dramatic number, a 97% drop in drugs arriving by sea.
And believe me, it didn't stop there. All of these points were kind of pulled together into this grand finale of claims. We're talking ending 8 wars, creating the most secure border in history, achieving the largest drop in violent crime ever recorded, and then topping it all off by calling it the most successful first year of any administration ever.
So, okay, those were the claims made in the speech. Big stuff, right? But after it was all over, news analysis started coming out that provided some really important context. So now, let's look at what the reporters clarified.
First, the report clarified what that whole Strait of Hormuz situation was actually about. It referred specifically to Iran reopening the waterway to commercial ships, but, and this is a big but, it also noted that the U.S. blockade on Iranian ports was still in place, waiting for a final peace deal.
The analysis also added a few other really crucial clarifications. For one, it did confirm that Pakistan was acting as a mediator and that negotiations were still ongoing. But here's the key detail about that NATO offer. The offer, which came from allies like France, the UK, and Australia, it wasn't for military engagement. It was specifically an offer to help escort commercial ships through the waterway. So, a little different.
And all of this kind of brings us to our final thought. We've laid out the big claims from the speech, and then the context from the analysis that followed. And really, it highlights a theme you see a lot in politics. So the question we're left with, and the one I'll leave with you, is this. When any leader declares victory, what are the details, the conditions, and the unanswered questions that we should still be asking?